I want to thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to come up here and talk, and I want to apologize in advance. All the really smart people in my organization are back doing the work, and you got me. So I'm very happy to be here, though, to talk about our experiences with data virtualization. And let's see if this thing will move. There we go. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself with this in the background, because I'm told that I must show some of these privacy regulations and our quote-unquote disclaimer about how we use data and how we consume data, and what we're focusing on in this presentation. And certainly, the opinions that I'm expressing are my opinions, not necessarily the opinions of Comcast as an organization. But I do have a lot of opinions. So they did give you a brief background on myself, and I've been at Comcast for just over 2 years. I came from a lot of consulting background, spent some time with Deloitte, both in audit. So yes, I'm an accountant. That's the data geek side of me. And in Deloitte Consulting, as well as Ernst & Young Consulting, EDS. So I've seen a lot of companies, spent a lot of time with the pharma companies, especially in and around the Philadelphia area. And I did spend a brief stint with a small little medium-sized commercial real estate company as their CIO, and that was also a unique experience that I have being in that world compared to the big corporate structure that now I experience within Comcast. So what's been interesting is, I can appreciate what Martin was describing in his presentation, but the complexities that you have to deal with in these large corporations can be astonishing, and I think the virtualization approach helps to smooth out some of that rough road that you experience in trying to access the data. So when I came to Comcast and joined the team as a VP of MIS for a small little division that we called the Interactive Media Group, and how many Comcast customers do we have? Thank you. Thank you very much. All of you. Thank you. But the Interactive Media Group is the group that developed, if you have an iPad or an iPhone or an Android, the apps that we put out there for you to view the guide, change the channel, set a remote recording. We also have an app that we call the Connect app that allows you to view your email and your address book, and we now have the capability to send text messages between the apps so that you can actually receive them at home, and individuals that maybe don't have a cell phone in your house, like maybe some of the children in your house, they can have an iPod or a device like that has the app on it and can receive text messages. So I, as a parent, very much appreciate that. So that's what the Interactive Media Group did. And they recognized that they had a need to access more data and combine data, and that they weren't very good at generating reports or analytics on the operations side of the house. So my team was formed, and we quickly recognized that this Interactive Media division, which is a small little piece of the bigger Comcast puzzle, had a lot of data, and that other people were very interested in our data. So how can we make that available? Again, virtualization became an answer. And we also realized that not only did we want to share our data, we wanted access to their data, because the online world was quickly merging with the set-top box world. So the online world was trying to tell the story about how they influence the traditional cable side of the house. And the online world, the people wearing the jeans and the t-shirts, how can they talk to the folks wearing the suits and the ties? And by the way, if you're ever in the Comcast building and you're walking up and down between the floors, you'll notice a very distinct culture change as you move between the different units in our organization. And that in and of itself presents challenges, those cultural differences. So data virtualization becomes a way to approach some of that. So that's what we started to do, and we had the tool Composite in-house. And there's other folks here from Comcast that are from one of our divisions, and they use Composite in their division. So completely separate and distinct from the instance that we have, but they're doing it successfully. So just to kind of give you a little, y'all know Comcast, right? I don't think I need to talk at length about what we are or who we are. But that just kind of gives you maybe a little bit of perspective on the scale and the scope that we have related to our customer base. But this, to me, really paints a picture that I don't think everybody clearly understands about Comcast. I certainly didn't until I got involved. And I know there's some very small printing up here, so I apologize about that. But the point is, the cable company today is not just a video service company. And I know you all recognize that we also provide broadband services to the household. We also provide digital voice services. So if you've been marketed to ad nauseum, as we tend to do, the triple play package that we offer is just that. It's a combination of those services. But did you also know we have home security? Did you also know we have a signature support service? Did you also know we have a business services unit? We have another company called Spotlight that does advertising sales. So we're really not just a video service. And then within this, the picture that I wanted to draw for you is the fact that we have products that not only go within these silos, but span the silos. So the single play, double play, triple play concept. And there's all various ways that different services get packaged between a basic and advanced tier, between digital and standard, your high def, and all those different services that we can provide to the household. Also wanted to mention the fact that we have premium services, and you know that, like our HBOs and our Showtime partners, content providers, that they give us the content that we then share with you through our network. We have our apps, and I mentioned some of that, the Xfinity TV app, the Xfinity Connect app, and the home security team has the Xfinity Home app, which is actually kind of cool. If you've got the home security system and you've got cameras or something in your house, you can be on your iPhone and you can view what's going on in your house. So again, as a parent, I very much appreciate that. And then we bundle everything, like I said. So the cable company is not simple. So data is everywhere, okay? And if you can imagine, the way the company grew was through acquisition. Comcast didn't start as this massive company with 20 million subscribers. It started as one little company in Arkansas with a few subscribers, and literally where Brian Roberts and his father were climbing poles themselves, stringing wire way back when. And then they acquired, and as would happen, you don't merge everything. Data repositories and systems stay separate. Today, we have 3 divisions that in and of themselves are multi-billion-dollar entities. So they run their ships, and they have their systems and their repositories. Corporate is more of a nuisance to them. But we at corporate have certain needs and desires for the data. We have marketing teams and sales teams that are working nationally. So we need to pull all that stuff together, and we need to make that data available to the organization. Let's see, is this going to move? Okay. So the perspective that we took related to our deployment of virtualization is related to the customer. Similar to what Martin was saying, and a better understanding of the customer. That's what we want. Believe it or not, for all the complaints that Comcast has to field related to how we interact with our customers, we very much want to serve our customers better, and we want to understand how to do that. We want to understand the desires. So, as we drew a picture here related to our customers and how they interact with us and how we interact with them, okay? And that's through the call centers or through email or on, maybe it's on our website through blogs and chat forums, whatever. We also have the activity that the customer does on our network or with our products, okay? And that's watching the videos, that might be using a product, might be making the phone calls, it's employing the broadband capacity for whatever reason they want to. And then finally, it's the usage. How do they use it? Are they on their mobile? Are they on a PC? Are they on their set-top box? One of the challenges that we have in our customer base is that we have multiple relationships with our customer if you have a primary residence and you have a vacation home. Or if you're a student and you're at home and then you go to college. So it's a very complex relationship that we have. We want to understand it. We want to use that information to improve the efficiency of our operations. Okay, obviously we're there to make a profit, so we want to do it in a cost-effective way. We want to innovate our products and services, and we're constantly doing that. That's been a tremendous learning experience for me, getting kind of behind the Iron Curtain, so to speak. And yes, cable companies are very often late to the table when it comes to new technologies or innovating because they have a lot of legacy architecture out there and a lot of legacy relationships. I mean, believe me, we've got customers that have been with us for 30 plus years and probably still have that original set-top box that we gave them back then because they just don't swap it out and they're watching a 20-inch television screen that might still be black and white. So we have to be able to handle that. Yet we do want to innovate. We recognize the growth of TV everywhere and how people are consuming video across multiple platforms, wherever they are, multiple locations. So we are innovating and we are working towards that. And we do want to provide that stable architecture. So all of this data comes together to help us do that and provide that 360-degree view of our interaction with the customer. And if you can imagine, and we try to use this picture, I'm trying to use this picture to represent taking that complexity on those different axes and then placing that within each of our different business units, divisions, functions, however you want to describe the organization. But that's what we're trying to say here is it is actually independent. So the divisions work independently. There are some sales organizations that have their own repositories that work independently, and that data is not necessarily integrated. Nor do we want it to be integrated. There's no need to integrate it regularly. Or at least until the last few years, we also weren't asking questions of that integrated data. Well, in the New World Order, now that our competition is evolving to be Google and AOL and Yahoo, we need to understand our customers better and we need to ask questions of it. So the desire to pull all this data together from across the business units, across the functions, continued to grow. So again, virtualization became a very cost-effective way to do that. And as Martin mentioned in his discussion, it's rapid. We can do things quickly and we can pull it together quickly. So you can imagine too, and especially those of you that are customers, and whenever you're interacting with an organization, you expect simplicity. You don't expect to be burdened by our complexity. You do expect a unified message. You do expect the same understanding. You don't expect to call a call center 3 times and get 3 different answers. You don't expect to be marketed a product you already have. So those are the kind of issues that our belief is that we want to try to address and tackle through virtualization. And I just threw these examples up here, I think, to clarify the picture a little bit, to help you understand exactly what it is, in each of these buckets that I'm talking about. IVR is our interactive voice response system. We do have our self-service applications. We have our demographics and our segmentation of our customers. Of course, there's the whole fulfillment side on activity, and then the different interactions that our customers are having with their remote DVR functionality and channel tuning. And then finally on the usage side with bandwidth consumption, all of that stuff is monitored and captured for operational purposes. It's out there. We got to keep the lights on. But it's also valuable information to help us understand how to improve our products or improve our interaction with our customers. So the vision for what we termed data big, and so we're not really creative marketing folks. We didn't get real fancy with the name, and it's somewhat of a dyslexic representation of the common terminology out there, but it works for us. So it's data big. And data big was meant to join all these different silos of information, unify the data, make it presentable in a human readable format. Okay? The nice thing about the platform is, the Federation platform is, we have the capability to be human readable or machine readable. We can go either way. But our primary vision first was make it human consumable so that we can leverage the information. And for us, it is a multiple tool platform. Okay? For us, Composite is the virtualization engine that we're using. But it's not just virtualization. We do have to perform ETL. We do have to store data for various purposes. We can't federate or virtualize everything. And we have to recognize that as we work with our business partners, understand the use cases, the types of data, the source system. But our primary objective is have the virtualization as a component of this data big environment. We do want to control access and governance. So we do apply security. One of our mantras is, we'll shake the hand of the system owner and then give you access to the data. We go to the system owner, and when we talk to them, we make the business case that we're going to cut down on all the people that are calling you. So if you're fed up with receiving phone calls and fulfilling requests, we can help take care of that. Let's agree on the on how we're going to connect. Let's agree on how we're going to refresh the data, how your system is going to be accessed. Then we'll control the access to the data from there. So a lot of the system owners or stakeholders that we've been dealing with appreciate that, and they recognize that it makes their data available and lessens the burden on them. We are creating a conformed data schema and coordinating that data latency, like I mentioned. And how we're using it. Well, we're using it in analytic portals, and we're using it for advanced modeling. And that's where the agile nature of the approach really comes into play. So, and that was the vision. It's that agile data assembly, okay? The fact is, planned deployments of data warehouses take a long time, and they should. There should be rigor. There should be standardization. There should be strict data quality standards. Absolutely, that has to happen. The information consumers demand access to those consolidated platforms and disparate information sources. That's going to continue to be there. That's not going to go away. And with that, those demand pressures for the data result in people going and doing their own thing. They go and set up their own kind of black box repository under a desk, under in an analyst cube somewhere, because you can. We have an enterprise license for Oracle. Anybody can stand up an Oracle database and essentially not pay for it. So it results in, they need the data, they need it fast, they don't want to wait to go through the IT organization and the requisition process to have their priorities evaluated against everybody else's priorities, and so they go do their own thing. So for us, DataBig helped to accelerate that simultaneous federated access. It creates those unified views rapidly, and then what we can do, and for me this is an important concept, we can then destroy them. If they're not needed, destroy it. You're not standing up big iron. You're not building a disaster recovery approach. When you have a database and you got to have redundant copies, and then you have to mirror everything, and you have to get the SAN attached to the server because it's not on server storage, it's SAN storage. You can avoid all of that, especially when you find out the data doesn't really have much value. If you do your analysis and you realize, okay, learned something, don't need it again, we can destroy it. We don't have to keep it. And then finally, for us, what is DataBig? We work on, and I put it in quotes, the seamless transition into maybe consolidated data warehouses or consolidated repositories once the value of data has been proven. So in some cases, we keep the data in the virtualization layer because we keep the sources in the virtualization layer. We keep them exposed to the general public. But if there's a need to operationalize that data as a part of another platform because the value was defined and determined, that's what we work towards. So, and I have an example where I talk about a use case later on in the deck where I talk about some of that. And then finally, what was the other part of the vision was promoting this advanced analytics. We as an organization are working to elevate our competencies around advanced analytics. That requires a lot of data, and it requires you to move fast. So we want this rapid deployment approach. We want to be agile. We want to correlate the disparate data. We want to allow for that value identification before making a big investment. That's what DataBig has offered for us. And I believe this last bullet point I think is important. It accelerates the process of creating a learning organization about your data. We are building awareness around the organization about our data. It's no longer sitting in a silo. Some analyst isn't just working with what they got. We can make available whatever it is that you want, and then everybody is learning and becoming smarter and not just sitting with their blinders on. So that's become an important component of everything that we do. I put this up here just to give you an idea of our strawman architecture. It's very simplified. There are other components, but this just gets back to the point that our federation layer and that engine is a part of a bigger whole. And absolutely, we use it with our data warehouse. And I think I'll talk about that in a moment. We have all of our source systems. In some cases, we access those source systems directly. In other cases, we have other repositories out there that we connect to and create the model in the federated layer and for virtualization. And then finally at the top level, we have a whole host of analytic tools. We're trying to get better at standardizing that and centralizing that. The fact is we never will. We have just about everything. But the primary players are Tableau, Oracle, and then some advanced analytic and modeling tools like R or SAS or whatever it is that you choose. But it's a part of a bigger whole. And then I like this picture. A lot of this is going to mean anything to you all. The point that I want to make with this is data exists across all these functional organizations in our company. I'm not representing even breaking this down to the divisions, which would be a whole nother layer. I mean, we could have a ridiculous chart up here if I tried to represent that. But the point is, and I use this slide in our organization to talk about, here's everything that's out there. And it might not even be everything. This is a lot, and it's not quite everything. But we've plugged into the green stuff. We have good hard connections. We have the handshake. We have the agreement. In the gray areas, they're on board, but not quite. We don't have regular access. We pull the data on demand. We refresh the virtual repository, but it's not a constant stream. And then, oh boy, there's a whole bunch of others that we still want to get to. And we're going to get to eventually as we continue to build our eminence and we continue to build the agreement in the organization. So I just wanted to hit on this real quick as some takeaways for you all before I talk about our use cases. And you could say these are based upon experience. I would not say these are necessarily specific to us, but definitely our experience has contributed to development of some of these points. I mean, I think we've talked about the opportunities, and you all, if you're here considering this or thinking about it, you're probably weighing some of these opportunities in your own organization. The couple that I want to highlight is improved information quality. One thing that we've found is we've accelerated the identification of quality issues by exposing the data more quickly and frankly through a less rigorous process. Just by getting connected, getting it available, not worrying about schemas and indexes and structures, we get at the data faster. Therefore, we discover the issues faster. And before we start a process of maybe moving it into a data warehouse, we can solve some of those up front. Because guess what? I didn't create those issues. I simply surfaced them. We have to go back to the source system to solve the issues. So our virtual repository simply shows the issues. We can't fix it. So we have to wait for the source system to fix it before we can refresh. And then the last bullet that I want to highlight is, it does, in my opinion, again, I have opinions, it does allow for those strategic repositories to get developed in the appropriate time. They take time, usually in excess of 12 months. So it allows that to happen. We can work with the business partners to get them the data they need, allow them to do the analysis they need while those long roadmaps are evolving. And then at the point in time that the data warehouse is available, in that picture that I showed you, we'll unplug out of the source system and plug into the data warehouse. That's the goal. That's the objective. So for the end user, their access to the data doesn't change. It's invisible to them that we've now remapped on the back end. Again, the beauty of virtualization. So on the risk side, senior leadership support is big. And if you don't get it, you face some of the sub-bullets that I'm mentioning there, that siloed mentality never goes away. That your source data stakeholders deny your request because they have other priorities. So they don't see the mandate. You see the mandate. They don't. They show you the hand. You constantly will have those competing efforts for priority. And then really, there's no consequence of non-compliance. If they don't play, so what? No one's going to force them to, and they're just going to go on their merry way. And then the last bullet that I want to highlight is, again, from my perspective, it's a perception that solutions outside of data warehousing are competing and not complementary. As I've explained, I believe they're very complementary, and they can work together, be in the same space, promote the same data that the data warehouse team wants to promote. We're just going to provide access to it as the roadmap evolves. So a couple use cases to run through and tell you a little bit about what we did. This first one is labeled Captive Portal Analytics. You as a customer, when you're first signed up for Comcast and the technician comes out to your house, or you take a self-installs kit, on the back end, we have what's called the captive portal process, where there are a series of steps that you have to go through to provision your box, get your account set up, make sure your service is working, and then out the other end, you're a happy consumer watching videos and browsing the internet. We recognize, or the team that manages that process recognized that there were some issues. There were people falling out of the loop. The process wasn't working exactly right. So they came to us and said, help us out. So what we did is we plugged into these multiple sources and kind of pulled in customer information. We pulled in some of the operational information. The Grand Slam reference you see there is our customer care center and call logs and what people called about. And in a matter of a couple, 10 days with one FTE, we pulled together this collection of data and reporting. And it's not too big. It was refreshing about 125,000 records a day, but it was refreshing every day once we set this thing up. And what it turned into is some graphs and some charts and some drill down analysis that the analysts could go into. So previously, before we did this, the analysts were literally getting file extracts in multiple ways, text files, some in spreadsheet, some in tab delimited versus comma delimited. They'd have to piece it all together, and they spent hours, if not days, just piecing the data together before they could even start to take a look at it. So we eliminated that, we put this together, and it created this more timely analysis. And the second bullet there, I think, was a key takeaway for us after we got through this process. It created a better adoption of our tools. And by tools, when you go through the Comcast process, one of the things that they want to do is when they set up your computer, they ask you to log into your email account, and then there's a toolbar that goes into your browser. Well, if you don't complete the process and that toolbar doesn't get there, we've shown, our data has shown, that people are less likely to adopt some of their tools because the toolbar provides direct clicked access to those tools. So we found that improved, and that, of course, helped improve customer satisfaction. They're happier, and from an internal perspective, it helped increase revenue because when you go to our web pages, we have ads, and ad revenue comes to the company every time you view those ads. So that was one application use case that we did. The second one was more operational, and it was this proof of concept around linear video integration and correlation. Okay, what this is, in very simple terms, we connected the virtual platform out across our architecture. Now you see less customer-centric data sources. You see more operational data sources. So now we're plugging into, literally routers that were out in our architecture that are shuffling bandwidth and packets back and forth. In 4 days, again, one person, after mapping out the architecture, connected to these sources, pulled the data together, and we created an operational portal. Nothing fancy, right? But what this is showing is in a certain market, this channel is experiencing signal quality issues. This was never ever produced before in our organization. So the theory here behind doing this proof of concept was, in near real time, we can be identifying issues in the architecture before the customers even call. So if we can identify this and we can source this data quickly, what do we do with it? Well, can we integrate it into a message to the customer? So can we build triggers that will notify the customer, hey, we know channel 12 in your area is experiencing signal quality issues. Please be patient, we're trying to fix it. Because every phone call that we can reduce, we save money and we improve customer satisfaction. So, doing this, and there's the opportunity maybe even integrate this with our customer care center, so that the care center that supports this region, obviously they were having issues on the day that I took this snapshot, but the care center that supports that region can gear up for more phone calls. Because they do expand and contract on demand with their care reps depending on what they perceive the call volume to be. If there's a storm coming, they gear up. In an example like this, if we can ahead of time see that there's issues in the architecture, they can be prepared with a message and with the people to be able to keep the customers happy. The last one, use case that I'll show you, if this moves, and was really, I think, our cornerstone use case. And this is our One Welcome field technician trials. So when the field technicians come into your house and they do things, there's a script they're supposed to follow. There's certain things they're supposed to do. Well, we found that wasn't always happening. And we also recognize that is your first touch point with us as a company. They're the vanguard. So how do we get them to start you on the path of a good customer experience? So over a matter of 2 weeks, we threw together this proof of concept, and we connected to these multiple data sources. The NDW is our national data warehouse. We had voice of customer survey. We had interactive voice recorder logs. We had our captive portal. OnTrack is the system that we use to track the truck rolls. So when a truck rolls out and the technician is filling in what they did, that was that. And then we went into how the customer interacted after the fact. So the mail logs and the web activity logs. And we pulled all this together in a dashboard. And the first thing that this One Welcome team did is they analyzed. And they looked at the data and said, what is the data telling us? Okay, we have an understanding of that. Now let's employ some tactics. So they literally created multiple versions of scripts for technicians in the house. They would, in a market, they would create a control group of customers. Then they would deploy different scripts to field technicians and let them have at it. After the fact, we created this eye chart, which, trust me, on your computer screen is much easier to read. But what it has, and this is just to drive home the point, we created a myriad of measures for these folks on top of the data that they could look at and analyze and understand the impact of these different tactics in the house compared to the control group. And that's really what you're seeing here in these different columns. I know, again, you can't read it, but one column is control, the other column is trial. And so there's side-by-side measures, and over the weeks after these customers were treated, we tracked the performance. And they wanted to see, are we influencing? And they found some tactics worked better than others. And they constantly evolved over a period of about 12 weeks. We stood it up, they would analyze, they would evolve, and it was a very interactive and iterative process that they went through. But what did it lead to? Well, some of the benefits that we found in just this short period of time, I'm not gonna say they were astounding, but they were very, very valuable. And so for example, we found that branding rate, jump. And where I put the arrows on these charts, by the way, is where the deployment happened, where they started the field technician trials. So the arrow shows that, and you'll see on all these charts that there was a noticeable bump in the metrics. And 10 to 12%, I guess, theoretically might not seem like a huge increase, but the fact that it was always around 30 to 40%, and then the measure jumped to 50 to 60%, was remarkable. Also on the other chart here, we noticed that you can see that with the broadband connects and the captive portal starts, while they remained fairly consistent, we saw that bump in branding increase. In other words, there wasn't more people causing it. It was the same number of people, but our success rate went up. This chart is meant to show that our service on install, so that's a measure that we use to say we just did an install, within 30 days we come back to your house to do service. Not good. Generally leads to poor customer satisfaction, increased cost for us. So what this shows is after the deployment, you can see that the bar chart is significantly lower where it was prior to, and then that line, which is the rework rate, again going back and redoing what we previously did, is also decreasing. This chart shows you that the FTUI, for us, that's the first time user experience. By the way, I don't know about other industries, but the cable industry loves using acronyms. It's just crazy, and it's everywhere. So I tried in the presentation to make sure I replaced them, and this one I forgot. So that's first time user experience. But what this shows is that by using the self-help pages, the calls that agents were handling dropped because we improved the message that was on the self-help pages, and they monitored the performance. And I think this is the last one, but this talks about the voice of the customer ratings that our technicians got. And again, you can see, it was consistently down here in the 91, 92 range, and then it bumped. It leveled out, and since then it has stayed in that 93 range. And again, a couple percentage points is a big deal. So what happened? They took this 3-month trial, and they went national. So it is now part of our operations. And when I mentioned earlier about we go from Agile into how do we transition into operations, this is the perfect example of it. Because that on-track system that I mentioned is the system that they use to track performance. So we took these measures and data sources and the model, and we migrated it over into their operational platform so that every day they're looking at it, they're seeing it, they're using it to manage performance, and we've transitioned out of this virtual platform. So what's next for us? Just to kind of close this out. we're going to continue aggregating news sources. This is something I very much believe in, and I believe in the value of the network of that data. The more data we add, the more valuable it gets, because the more connections we can make, and the more opportunity really smart people have to dive into that data from different angles. We are going to continue to evolve our Agile assembly methods and our approach to business intelligence. So, that starts to pull in, our use of SAS and R and those more advanced modeling techniques. We are working to evolve to a more, now I'm going to use the standard term, big data architecture, and putting this on top of, Hadoop repositories of event archives, because we have a lot of that. We are working to elevate our internal competencies. So, we're a little behind when it comes to having those competencies in-house to dive into the data in these advanced methodologies. So we're working on elevating that, but we've got to have the data first. If there's no data to dive into, that data scientist is going to be bored, or they're not going to be effective. So we're really working on trying to make the data available and then get the people using it. And then finally, this is something that's been developed over the last few months. I want it to be more self-serve. I don't always want the end user to have to call us to say, I'd like you to plug into a new data source for me. Here's my requirements. So what we've developed, and Composite's been a great partner in this, we've developed a browser-based catalog interface that would allow any user in our organization to browse what data is available. Now, they're not going to write queries through that interface, but they can preview the data. They can see all the different schemas that we have, the different objects that we've created, whether it's a virtual view or a table, whatever it is. They can see the data elements are in there. They can see the data lineage. So what source system did that come from? And then they can preview the data. I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a huge value to the organization. And again, more promotion of that knowledge-oriented culture that we really want to have. Make people smarter about the data that's available, that's out there, so that they can be better at their jobs and drive value at Comcast. That's what we want to do ultimately with virtualization. So that's it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're ahead of the game. So
wow.
that means you get to take questions.
Okay, well, and I know it's almost lunchtime, so.
So we'll take a few questions, and then we'll have one more quick session that I think you guys will enjoy. So, Weehong.
Yes, page 25, please. Can you go back to page 25?
Page 25. Oh boy. Uh-oh. Oh boy. 25. Okay, let's see. What? I didn't memorize the page number, so.
I do.
Yeah.
On the top left corner, you mentioned Tableau.
Yes.
Can you say a few words? Is that related to page 37?
Page 30. What's on 37? You know my pages better than I do. So here's how our analytics are evolving. And this has been a lesson learned for us throughout this process. We very often jump to publish to a dashboard, publish to a model. And if you've ever used OBI, and again, enterprise license for Oracle, so we use OBI. OBI internally is fairly complex. You have to publish through 3 different layers of the architecture to make the data available. You have to make the source connection, then you have to combine and create the virtual views and maybe set some formulas, and then you create the business layer, which the business user ultimately sees. So you make that user-friendly name for the fields before you push it into the dashboard layer and give them access to it. So we were doing that, and what we were finding is that takes longer than what we wanted, and that ultimately our end users didn't want it. They weren't looking at the dashboards. What they would do is they'd look at the data in the dashboard and then extract it. So we said, okay, well that's silly. That's not the whole point. So what we're tending more towards now too is, and again, this comes back to developing the competencies and having those really smart people in your organization. We want our analysts to learn SQL. All right, start to get a little bit more technical. So now we're giving them direct access to the data so that they can massage it and do it. So again, we've streamlined our delivery even a little bit more. When asked, we will absolutely do even more advanced combinations or create views, but I very much want the organization to do that. So that's the background for why Tableau came into the picture recently. There are still those folks that would like to see a dashboard or would like to see it visual, and I would like our organization to get more visual. We are very numbers and tables and columns and that eye chart that I put up there, that's what people ask for. So I'd very much like people to start asking for, the bubble chart or the heat map or, whatever kind of visualization that we can do. And Tableau is really good at that. And it's good at doing it pretty quickly. Connect into the source. It gives you access to your records that are displayed through, through Composite, just as the data source, and then we publish it out pretty quickly. So that's how Tableau, and we're figuring out how to balance it. I mean, it's really only within the last 3 months that we've started using Tableau. So, so far so good. And definitely, as we work with our business users, we help understand from them, what do you want? You want the data? You want a dashboard? Don't make us do a dashboard if all you want is the data. So that's what we're trying to balance.
Hold on.
3.
I have a quick question for you. So it sounds like you're pretty advanced and you've moved pretty far down the road. Can you give us an idea of what resources were required initially when you started the effort, and what are you at now?
Yeah, well, the knowledge of the tool is important, is what we learned, and Composite's been a great partner for us in that, in providing services and help us develop some of the competencies in-house. So, I mean, basically, it's data engineering knowledge. And it also applies to the platform you're going after. So a knowledge of, you're pushing those queries back into those source systems, and if those source systems are Oracle versus SQL Server versus Teradata, whatever that end repository is, you're going to have to work with those, and if you don't manage that platform, you're going to have to work with those platform managers to optimize. So those data development, data engineering competencies, and how to optimize the queries, how to do the joins, the inner joins, the outer joins, everything that you want to do, you're just doing it in that virtual layer. Where the composite knowledge comes into play, and this is how we've architected it. I kind of describe what OBI has in internally. It's got 3 different levels you have to promote through. We've done the same thing in composite, again, to simplify what our end consumers see. So we have 3 different layers that we connect to the source. We do our virtual joins and our views, and then we might do another massaging to rename something to make it look nice. But to maintain that data lineage, we have 3 different levels. So having the understanding of the composite tool, how to optimize its performance, how to configure it. What we're trying to do is move from less data development and more configuration, if that makes sense. So once we had the data in there, it's more of a configuration exercise to plug everything together, optimize the view, and again, making the decisions. Do you push the cache to disk? Do you keep it in memory? So. That's correct. It's data development resources, right? If they know SQL, what we're working with Composite on is transitioning the knowledge, getting our folks smart about Composite. But I mean, it's critical. You need to know your data. You need to know